Good day to all esteemed delegates and participants. It is my absolute delight to welcome you and express thanks to you for taking the time to join today's webinar, coordinated by the Tsunami Unit of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, IOC. This is the last in a series of thematic webinars organized by the IOC in advance of the 31st session of the IOC Assembly, 14th to 25th June, 2021. I am Alison Broom, Program Officer for Coastal Hazards at the UNESCO IOC Caribbean Tsunami Information Center based in Barbados. I am pleased to be your moderator for today's session. I hope you can hear and see me well. If you are experiencing any technical challenges at all, please write your questions or comments in the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and the technical team will do their best to address them promptly. Please also remember to click on the interpretation icon, and that is the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, the bottom right, and select your chosen language. Today's webinar topic is Towards Global Tsunami Awareness, Tsunami Ready Communities. It has been conceptualized in the context of a safe ocean, one of the 7 societal outcomes to be achieved under the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, 2021 to 2030. And it's concerned with protecting life and livelihoods from ocean-related hazards. Over the next hour, we will review 5 short but we hope very stimulating videos on various tsunami awareness initiatives from across the globe, and hear from very influential national contributors who are Dr. Sylvia Chacon-Barantes, Dr. Nikos Kaligeris, Dr. Srinivasa, Kumar, Dr. Laura Kong, and Wilde Maris Gonzalez-Ruiz. We will also learn more about the World Tsunami Awareness Day from Dennis Mclean of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR, before we have an opportunity for enriching discussion led by our own IOC Executive Secretary and Assistant Director General of UNESCO, Dr. Vladimir Ryavin. In preparation for the question and answer forum, please also write any questions or comments in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will be sure to discuss these at the end. I am pleased to start the video series with the community of Tamarindo, Costa Rica, which is located on the North Pacific coast of Costa Rica. Technical team, can we have video 1, please?
En Costa Rica hemos hecho grandes avances en preparación ante tsunamis en los últimos 6 años. El papel del sector turístico es sumamente importante. En Costa Rica prácticamente todas nuestras comunidades costeras tienen algún atractivo turístico, cuentan con alguna infraestructura turística, y necesitamos a las personas que son dueñas y que trabajan en estas infraestructuras turísticas que estén involucradas en el plan. La principal lección que hemos aprendido en el caso de Tamarindo es la importancia de que todos los actores presentes en la comunidad se involucren en la elaboración y mantenimiento de este plan.
En temporada alta podemos tener hasta 2,000 personas hospedadas. Por eso decidimos hacer un video corto y sencillo explicando que somos una comunidad organizada y además las principales acciones que tienen que hacer a la hora de una evacuación.
Los planes de preparativos y respuesta ante tsunamis son muy importantes porque así las comunidades y sus visitantes saben qué esperar, saben quién y cómo les avisa que hay una alerta, saben lo que tienen que hacer.
En el caso de un evento cercano tenemos hasta 20 minutos para evacuar y en un caso lejano tenemos hasta 2 horas. Eso nos permite poder programar una evacuación ordenada.
Y es imprescindible que estas comunidades tomen la iniciativa, busquen la información y tomen un papel activo en su preparación ante tsunamis, así como todas las personas del país que visitamos y acostumbramos visitar las playas, que estemos conscientes de que la amenaza existe y sepamos cómo prepararnos.
I now have the honor to invite Dr. Sylvia Chacon-Barantes, Chair of the Intergovernmental Coordinating Group for the Tsunami and Other Coastal Hazards Warning System for the Caribbean and adjacent regions, as well as the coordinator of Cinema Costa Rica, to share a bit more with you on the Tamarindo initiative. Dr. Chacon, you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody from Costa Rica. Thank you very much for considering Tamarindo as one of the experiences for this webinar. It's been a long way since we started preparing communities, helping communities to prepare for tsunamis here. And Tamarindo was a very special case. It's a very different place because near the coast, there is only touristic businesses. There is no community by the coast as it is in many other places. And additionally, the owners of hotels and restaurants and these touristic businesses were really interested in preparing the community, in getting the tools to improve their tsunami preparedness. And this is unfortunately not as common as you wish. There are many hotels that don't even want to mention the word tsunami. And here we got the opposite. We got hotels that were eager to get prepared. It was easier in some aspects to work with them because they were organized. Of course, they had a person paid for them to work with us, to develop the plan, to so on. They made these videos. They pay for the tsunami evacuation route signs, and it was easier to work with them. And it was also interesting because, as I said, it's a different perspective. This is mostly touristic businesses nearby the coast. What else can I say? The organization of exercises, for example, has been also different because as these are people working in hotels and they are having many staff changes, then they made like basic training to the staff for these kind of things. And it's not the same as a community when we train the community and the community still lives there. So they're always, they know they are always there. And here the staff is rotating. So, but still they get the basic training and they have worked very well. They have participated in exercises, and all the experience has been very successful. I really hope that many other hotels and many other touristic communities or touristic businesses can learn from this experience and apply it, so the tourists can be safer anywhere in the world.
Certainly, we thank you, Dr. Chacon, and from the Tamarindo experience, we really value the fact that, one, you sought to target a wide range of community stakeholders, including the tourists, and of course, that key buy-in from staff, and of course, the owners and the proprietors of those tourism establishments, which is very critical as we move through our awareness and preparedness programs. So we'll move on and look at the communities in Bodrum and Turkey and the Greek island of Kos. In 2017, they were impacted by a small tsunami. And after this, the Tsunami Last Mile project was actually initiated. And therefore, I now invite you to view the project's activities as part of video 2. Can we have video 2, please, technical team?
Was an excellent opportunity to raise tsunami awareness in an area with a lot of seismic activity, but little recent tsunami history.
Local communities need to have tsunami response plans supported with regularly tested standard operational procedures so that they know what to do during a real event. An early warning system is not enough by itself, and the success of the mitigation depends purely on the commitment, awareness and preparedness of the civil protection mechanism, local authorities and the public.
The exercise achieved three things: test the local emergency response, test the pilot alerting system, and raise tsunami awareness of the local population. The biggest challenge from a tsunami warning perspective is the short tsunami arrival times at the coastal areas near the earthquake epicenter, which leave very little time for tsunami warning messages to reach the local population. This was very much the purpose of the exercise, to put emergency response to the test and improve upon the lessons learned through it.
The key to increase tsunami readiness in all coastal areas is to establish an effective partnership among all stakeholders with a focus on multi-hazard disaster risk reduction.
I am now delighted to call on Dr. Nikos Kaligeris, Principal Researcher for the Institute of Geodynamics of the National Observatory of Athens and the Operational Head of the Hellenic National Tsunami Warning Center, Greece, to provide you with a short reflection on video 2. Dr. Kaligeris, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Alison, and good day to everyone from stormy Greece. So tsunami arrival times in the Aegean Sea are very short, as coastal communities in Turkey and Greece are located near active faults. And this leaves a small time window for tsunami warning messages to effectively reach the authorities and warn the local population. The last mile technologies, some of which were showcased in the short video you just saw, have the capacity to detect strong local earthquakes and also tsunami waves approaching coastal communities. Moreover, the tsunami last mile technologies have the capability to warn both the local authorities and the local population at the same time to save precious time, which was very much the purpose of developing the tsunami last mile technologies to tackle the last mile of tsunami warning. However, the early warning system concept, which was presented in the last mile project, is one among others. And as Dr. Nechmioglu from Koeri mentioned in the video, having a tsunami early warning system is not enough by itself. In order to build tsunami ready communities and save lives, we have to do more to achieve the main goals of the three main pillars of the tsunami ready program, namely in tsunami hazard mitigation, preparedness, and response. So in order to build such communities, it needs strong governance and commitment from the civil protection mechanism, the local authorities, and the public. The recently established Tsunami Ready Sub-Working Group under Working Group 4 of the NIAM-TWS ICG shows the strong commitment of NIAM-TWS towards this endeavor. The last mile implementations in Bodrum and Kos were a great first step towards developing tsunami-ready communities in Turkey and Greece, as it included many of the elements of the tsunami-ready program were provided by the project, such as tsunami hazard assessment and the production of tsunami inundation and evacuation maps. Both the Greek and the Turkish parties will continue to actively pursue collaborations with each other and with other coastal communities, and hopefully we can further reduce tsunami risk in the region. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Dr. Kaligeris. We certainly appreciate the Last Mile project and the importance of testing, plans, procedures, and technology as highlighted by yourself and within the video. And we are very keen also, and perhaps it may come out in our questions and answers, to really understand the initiatives. Tsunami Ready, the last mile, and of course you said there are some similarities. So we really look forward to maybe having some of those discussions highlighted as well. From the Caribbean and the Mediterranean, we move to the Indian state of Odisha, which has really become a role model in the Indian Ocean. And we now look forward to viewing video 3. Can we have video 3, please?
Have the best warning system, we can generate the most accurate warning, for example. So even if we are able to do that, people need to really understand how to respond to that warning that is issued to them. So the Tsunami Ready program has a set of indicators. One such indicators, for example, is whether the communities have a hazard map or a tsunami response map. These two communities have met all the tsunami indicators. So this helps communities enhance their preparedness, and the communities are much more aware, they're much more prepared, they are much more resilient.
So far, 2 villages have become tsunami ready as per the definition, standards and parameters of UNESCO. We are very happy about it that IOTR, INCOIS and UNESCO have certified 2 of our villages and recognized them as tsunami ready villages, which helps us to take the same concept to all the 326 villages. Then in the villages we have committees or groups of young people who are trained in search and rescue, groups are trained in first aid, groups are trained in psychosocial counseling, and groups are also trained in shelter management. We are quite confident that we will make all our coastal villages tsunami ready in next 12 months time. We are going to do it because we see the intrinsic value in this tsunami readiness program. The sort of training and capacity development that is imparted to the village, that not only will help them in tsunami situations, but it builds their capacity and enhances their confidence to face cyclones, floods, and any other disasters.
It is now my pleasure to invite Dr. Srinivasa Kumar, Director of the Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, to share on this tsunami awareness experience in Odisha. Dr. Kumar, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Alison, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all colleagues out there. So Odisha province is in the east coast of India, and it's frequented by oceanogenic hazards such as cyclones, storm surges, coastal flooding, high waves, and so on. The turning point in some sense was the 1999 super cyclone that hit Odisha and then took about 10,000 lives. And then happened the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami that took about 15,000 lives in India and served as a huge triggering factor to strengthen disaster early warning and mitigation systems in the country and of course in the whole region. So INCOIS has since been acting as a tsunami early warning center for the country, and along with Australia and Indonesia also provides tsunami bulletins for the entire Indian Ocean region. Now we know that good progress has been made in establishing warning systems, but then the recent events happening, they have proven time and again that the best of warning systems could fail if communities are not prepared, if they do not understand the official and natural warning signs of a hazard, and respond appropriately and in a timely fashion. So the upstream technical part of the warning system has to be complemented by an equally strong social component, especially for infrequent short fuse events such as tsunamis. Now, there is a huge focus within the region as part of the IOT-WMS and also within India to actually strengthen the downstream preparedness through drills and, of course, more recently, the Tsunami Ready initiative. So 2 communities in Odisha, as you have seen from the video, Venkatrayapur and Nuliasahi, have been recognized as first ever communities in India and the Indian Ocean region as Tsunami Ready. Now, I would like to quickly, in a minute, list some of the important enabling factors that you might be interested in hearing that led to the successful implementation of TR. The strong measures implemented by the government and of course, at the state level, the Odisha State Disaster Management Authority in enhancing preparedness for more frequent disasters such as cyclones, it came in extremely handy to meet the 11 indicators of Tsunami Ready. For instance, Odisha had elements of Tsunami Ready, such as, for example, community risk reduction plan, hazard inundation evacuation map, emergency operations center, sirens, and safe shelters for cyclones. Now, through the efforts of the communities working together with all the technical agencies, disaster management agencies, etc., the existing capacities could be readily adapted to meet the Tsunami Ready indicators. Of course, there was huge help from the IoT and the IoT-WMS. Now, one thing that brought all the stakeholders together is the mechanism established by the Ministry of Earth Sciences called the National Tsunami Ready Board. Now, this played a key role in providing the necessary collaborative framework to bring together all these stakeholders to actually meet the Tsunami Ready indicators. Another important thing that led to the successful implementation is the tragic experience of 1999 super cyclone being at the back of the mind of the communities themselves. Now, this led to the communities becoming central stakeholders and champions in implementing the pilot. So they subscribed to this readily. And the initiative hugely benefited from the work of UNESCO, IOC, in developing regional guidelines, and of course, training programs, and the huge motivation to the communities that their efforts will be recognized by UNESCO IOC. Now, last but not the least, the fact that being prepared for a tsunami hazard enhances the capacities of communities to respond effectively to other coastal hazards like cyclones and storm surges. Now, this became especially important in communities such as Odisha, and perhaps the same with other communities where tsunami hazard is not very frequent. Like, for example, last couple of weeks, we had 2 back-to-back cyclones in India, and then one was in the East Coast, which actually borders the Odisha state. So the tsunami preparedness would certainly help with enhancing the preparedness for these hazards. So we certainly hope the Odisha experience will catalyze wider implementation of Tsunami Ready under a multi-hazard framework within India and also the broader Indian Ocean Rim countries, and contribute to safer communities as part of the UN decade. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Very enriching experience. You've really highlighted many of the facets, not only of the Tsunami Ready program as a requirement and as a recognition framework, but of course, how it can link to the multi-hazard framework, and of course, the additional response and psychosocial and assessments that you have actually embedded. And you've really made it quite a comprehensive initiative in Odisha. We would also like to hear from you at the end, participants. So please do remember to continue to include your questions and answers in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. As we continue our global tour in video 4, we will visit the Pacific Ocean and specifically Waikiki Beach in the US state of Hawaii. We welcome and hope to see video 4, please, from the technical team. Thank you.
On a typical day, there are more than 125,000 people living, working, and playing in Waikiki, an area of just 1 square mile with only a few surface roads leading inland.
when we talk about Waikiki, the risk, of course, is to the densely populated area, our visitor industry, and our hotels along the shoreline in Waikiki itself.
If a tsunami warning is issued, it would be nearly impossible to quickly and efficiently evacuate everyone physically out of Waikiki in time before the tsunami hits.
So in this case, we're one of the few counties that highly promotes vertical evacuation. Basically, that means getting to the 4th floor higher of a concrete and steel reinforced building that's 10 stories or more tall. It's really simple.
This well-known policy will avoid panic by visitors because all hotels and condos should have plans and not add to the traffic congestion of everyone evacuating out of Waikiki at the same time.
Waikiki is so densely populated with visitors and residents, the last thing we want is people to get caught on the ground when a tsunami comes ashore, because you just can't outrun those waves that are moving too fast. And vertical evacuation is a key for us for getting our population safely someplace out of harm's way in Waikiki proper when we have a tsunami coming. With this update on our tsunami vertical evacuation guidance in place, we're going to now be working very closely with our hotel management, hotel security, and also our condominium associations in the Waikiki area to educate them to the fact that vertical evacuation does work. It's a very simple concept, easy to do, and it will save lives.
Thank you, technical team. Participants, panelists, I don't know about you, but I'm seeing some very beautiful beaches this morning, and I think this really underscores the tone of what we are presenting today, because even though we're speaking of global tsunami awareness and so on, it's really to facilitate and enable persons to really enjoy our beautiful environments in a very safe manner and very inviting. And particularly as the summer is coming up, we look forward to a lot of this kind of relaxing activity. So we now would like to invite Dr. Laura Kong. I have the real pleasure of requesting her, the director of the International Tsunami Information Center in Hawaii, USA, to provide us with some reflection on the Waikiki experience. Dr. Kong, please proceed.
Good morning, Allison. I'm hoping you're hearing me because my camera doesn't want to come on. Is that correct? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
I'll just go on with a voice rather than a video. So good morning from Hawaii. Just by way of background, we're a target, a bullseye in the Pacific for all tsunamis around the Pacific. In 1946 was the start of our system in the United States, an Aleutian Island tsunami that hit us. And then, of course, in 1960, the magnitude 9.5 from Chile took 15 hours to hit Hawaii, went all the way across the Pacific to kill people in Japan and the Philippines. And that was really the start of our international system in the Pacific under the coordination of the IOC in 1965. But bringing us back to Waikiki, it is, you would say, the mecca for tourists in the Pacific. Something like $5 billion of our gross national product, our gross state product, 11% of our jobs. As I said, something like 125,000 people in a 1 square mile radius in any given day. And just by comparison, because of the COVID pandemic, our borders were essentially shut, and we were down to something like 400 people coming into the state a day. But now our borders are kind of open. Our vaccines are up at 50 or 60% of our population, and we have something like 40,000 people coming back into our state. And really for us, Waikiki is almost an island itself. It's high-rise, densely packed, beaches on one side, canal on the other, and only 2 ways in and out. So what I wanted to share really is evacuation pre-planning was really critical. We've got too many people in a densely packed area. Most of the people are tourists, so they're not familiar with the roads and they're not familiar with where to go. And probably a lot of them are not as familiar with tsunamis and what to do as we would like. So back in the 1990s, our county government said, we need to find a safe and simple solution. And that solution was actually to go up, right? So we do have a policy of vertical evacuation, but it wasn't easy and it still isn't easy. our buildings have to be safe, which means, up until 2016 and 2018 with the International Building Code, there were no building codes for tsunamis. And it wasn't until after the 2009 American Samoa and Samoa tsunami, 2010 in Chile, and then 2011 in Japan that our engineers really got together, did a lot of post-tsunami surveys looking at the engineering impact, and developed guidance and really prescriptive criteria for buildings. So we do have a building code for new buildings. We are still working on trying to, how do we assess old buildings? And then the challenge, of course, as you know, is a lot of these buildings are hotels. They're the private sector. So how can we make sure our private sector is comfortable that, there's always a liability if you open your doors to anyone during an emergency for safety. And we want to make sure our legislation, our laws cover that. And we do have also the challenges of language. Most people our tourists are from Japan, or they may not be speaking English. So it's really been as an effort of a holistic effort from government and private sector, our lifeguards and our beach safety people all working together to actually create I would say, a community of Waikiki and a community that's as ready as we can for tsunamis. So, I apologize, I have no video, but hopefully just by voice, I've been able to share something about what we're doing in Hawaii. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Dr. Kong. And really, we appreciate from the video and of course your intervention, the very special characteristics of Waikiki and how they have influenced the tsunami awareness program, especially with an emphasis on vertical evacuation. But I think you also highlighted some of our key considerations, even as we move through the decade, that collaboration with national authorities, local businesses, et cetera. And of course, you mentioned quite rightly implications for some of our other stakeholders as it relates to owners of businesses and so on. So very interesting considerations that we hope will also help to generate some discussion, and as we move forward that we can seek to embrace these wherever possible. Colleagues, we have traveled across many oceans and return now to the Caribbean for our final video. This time we go to the US state of Puerto Rico and the community of Guayanilla in Puerto Rico. Can we have our final video, please? Technical team, video 5.
Puerto Rico está localizado cerca de una zona activa de convergencia de placas tectónicas. Está rodeada y cruzada por fallas y por deslizamientos que pueden generar tsunami. De los 5 terremotos destructivos de los pasados 500 años, 2 de ellos han generado grandes tsunamis. Los tsunamis pueden llegar a la costa en minutos. Por eso es necesario que las comunidades estén listas para responder y desalojar rápidamente, tanto para señales naturales como para alertas oficiales. Como consecuencia del terremoto del 7 de enero del 2020, en donde la costa se hundió en Guayanilla, ahora mismo están más expuestos a tsunamis y hay que correr nuevos modelos de inundación para desarrollar nuevos mapas de desalojo y revisar los planes de desalojo y de respuesta. Pero lo que representa el mayor reto es el empoderamiento, tanto de las autoridades como de la población, que preparen sus planes, que participen en actividades como el Caribe Way y el Shakeout y que sigan mejorando su parte de preparación para que de esta forma podamos tener ciudadanos más resilientes y Tsunami Ready. Al día de hoy, en la actualidad, todo Puerto Rico ha sido reconocido como Tsunami Ready. Este programa une el esfuerzo de científicos, líderes comunitarios, manejadores de emergencia, la Red Sísmica de Puerto Rico, el Servicio Nacional de Meteorología y los medios de comunicación.
I am now very pleased to introduce Wildemaris Gonzalez Ruiz. She is the Tsunami and Earthquake Special Assistant to the Commissioner of the Puerto Rico Bureau of Emergency Management. Ms. Gonzalez, we now welcome you to share your experiences as it relates to Tsunami Ready Puerto Rico.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Good morning to everyone. So basically, I just want to let you know a little bit about what we're doing here in Puerto Rico. And I've been working with this program since I worked for 10 years with the Puerto Rico Seismic Network. And then I'm part of the emergency manager officer at the state office. So here in Puerto Rico, we have 250,000 people that live inside the evacuation zone. And we need to add millions of people that visit the coastal areas every day. So that's something, it's a challenge for us to help them understand, to help people understand how important it is for us that they get ready, that they prepare, that they get involved in the workshops and to improve their family plans and everything. It's been a challenge, definitely, but it's been amazing. Working with this program, it's a life-changing, definitely for us. I love work with communities, definitely, like see what they worry about, what are their needs, you know, what they're worried about if a tsunami comes. So here we have 46 communities that are tsunami ready in Puerto Rico. At the moment, we have 16 communities that are tsunami ready supported. That's something that is growing up a lot. We got a lot of people calling every day, trying to help, asking for help to do their plans for their agencies. That's a plus, because that means that emergency manager officers are going to be less stressed out during an emergency, because they're going to be like doing their own stuff. So that's something that it's really, really nice that is going on here. Because of the earthquake that happened on January 2020, last year, we closed the year with more than 13,000 earthquakes. A lot of them were felt for people. So that's something that it's help people understand that they need to be ready. So because of that, we got communities asking us for help to helping them with the plans. We have communities asking for us to help them doing drills, even during nighttime, so more people can participate during those drills. So that's something been really amazing. We got a lot of participation of communities. We have communities that are doing their own murals to help their own members of the communities, plus the visitors, to understand where are the evacuation routes, to understand what are the different alerts, tsunami alerts. So it's something that they're doing by their own. We got communities that are painting the evacuation route on the streets. So we have more people getting involved in this, and understanding how important it is to be ready, because we live in an island surrounded by water. And I think it's been this situation, even though it was hard last year, you know, with all the seismicity, it's been amazing seeing how people are getting more engaged on the preparedness. And this is something that definitely it's been a successful here, because we are a team. We include the communities, we include the local government, the state government, and the federal agencies. We are also discussing the possibility to build some evacuations buildings, vertical evacuation buildings in some zones, because some areas people have to walk more than 60 minutes, an hour or so to get out of the evacuation zone. So that's something that we're discussing with some mayors from some municipalities. That's something that it's really good, because in 1918, we have the last earthquake that generated a big tsunami, a major tsunami that affect us, and the water retreat in 5 minutes. So we don't have time to think about this, we need to just act. And that's something that I'm really proud of this program in Puerto Rico, because we're working hard and people are accepting more and more the program and the preparedness. So that's something that I'm really proud about. So any questions? You just.
Okay. Thank you, Damaris. We will engage a little later in the webinar, but definitely we appreciate the experience of Puerto Rico, and you mentioned very highlighting a key element that we also recognize is that whereas the actual institutions and businesses themselves can then obviously undertake to make themselves tsunami ready, and this is particularly an initiative under the US version of the Tsunami Ready, where we have our tsunami supporters. But of course, these are very much considerations and elements that we look to encourage as well as we implement our tsunami awareness and global awareness programs. So we truly appreciate the 5 speakers for their enlightening perspective and experiences on these select communities. All the videos that we presented today were actually produced by the UNDRR to mark World Tsunami Awareness Day 2020. And UNDRR coordinates these activities in association with UNESCO IOC. With this background then, we are now willing to learn a bit more of this day observed annually on November 5th, and I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Dennis Mclean. Dennis was an award-winning journalist in Ireland before joining the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, in 1990. He has managed emergency operations in Sri Lanka, the Congo, and the Caribbean, and worked on the Cyclone Preparedness Program in Bangladesh. He has also ran the IFRC press office in Geneva and edited the World Disasters Report. Dennis is now the head of communications at UNDRR, and this is a post he's held since 2011. And we welcome Mr. Mclean to provide us with some brief remarks on the World Tsunami Awareness Day. Dennis, please, we welcome you.
Thank you very much, Alison. I think we're running a bit behind time, so I'll cut it to 5 minutes or so. Is that okay?
Very much okay, but we look forward.
Alison. Thank you. It's been fascinating so far. So as Alison said, I represent the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, and we're the custodians of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. So in 2016, the UN Secretary General launched the Sendai Targets campaign, the Sendai 7. There are 7 targets in the Sendai Framework, which was adopted in 2015 to reduce disaster losses, save lives, reduce economic losses, reduce damage to critical infrastructure, and to boost the methods for doing that, such as last year we were promoting the national strategies for disaster risk reduction and making sure that tsunami risk was included in those where relevant and appropriate. And this year, the Sendai 7 campaign is focused on target F of the Sendai Framework, which is support international cooperation for developing countries to implement their national and local strategies for disaster risk reduction. So I think it's full of potential for us to work again very closely with the IOC UNESCO to promote tsunami readiness across the globe. We did produce, just to be for your information, as a result of our activity last year, which despite COVID was very successful, we have produced a short magazine called Tsunami News. I hope you can see it there on camera. And this is available on our website, undrr.org, if anyone would like to consult it. It's a very useful document which captures everything that was done last year, particularly the high-level events which we organized with IOC, UNESCO, UNDP, and others. And we're hopeful that again this year we will build on the momentum we gained last year when we had the highest audience outreach we've ever had in the 6 years of World Tsunami Awareness Day. We reached millions of people thanks to some of the videos that Alison introduced just now, and also to the very strong social media campaign that we ran with our partners around the world. And we can see year on year there is much more uptake of World Tsunami Awareness Day, and it's often linked to the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction, which precedes it by 4 weeks on October the 13th. And the two days are always linked by the fact that they commemorate or celebrate the same Sendai Framework target. And this year, as I said, it will be about international cooperation. And I think it's also very exciting that this year coincides with the commencement of the UN Ocean Decade. And we hope that we can link the day very strongly with the safe ocean outcome of the decade. And I think we're going to hear about more about that from Vladimir Ryavin in a short while. And it's also a great opportunity to advocate for the extension of the Tsunami Ready program around the world. We will do that by highlighting communities, the work that's going on to raise awareness of tsunami risk. And of course, it's much more than awareness about tsunami risk, because I was very struck listening to Dr. Kumar by the fact that Odisha has done an outstanding job in terms of cyclone preparedness over the last 20 years. and now has fully embraced Tsunami Ready. And it'll be very interesting this year to see what progress they've made on rolling out the Tsunami Ready program to all coastal communities in Odisha. And it's worthwhile highlighting as well that Odisha is one of the best performing states in India when it comes to containing and responding to the COVID pandemic. So I think a country which is tsunami ready is also ready for a lot of other hazards as well, because most countries now follow the Sendai framework recommendation to have a multi-hazard approach. So on the day itself, we should see a lot of activity on social media. We hope to develop more new videos in collaboration with IOC UNESCO, highlighting ongoing work and progress, recognizing communities who are doing a good job, and highlighting good practice in terms of international cooperation, because tsunami risk, of course, is something that no one country really can cope with on their own. We're dependent on expertise from overseas, we're dependent on technology transfer and lots of other things that help to make for a successful tsunami ready program. And I think over the next 10 years, we're going to see the scope of the work expand enormously, thanks to the impetus which we will receive from the startup of the UN Ocean Decade. Back to you, Alison.
Thank you, Dennis, for your presentation, your remarks. We can clearly see that through the videos and of course the World Tsunami Awareness Day remarks that have been provided, that they have really highlighted various community and international tsunami awareness initiatives, and which we also implement at various levels, from the community to the international level, through interaction with many of our stakeholders. And UNESCO IOC continues to play a leading role towards the achievement of this global tsunami awareness. And I truly have the honor today to introduce Dr. Vladimir Ryavin. Dr. Vladimir Ryavin is an oceanographer, a marine engineer, climatologist, and a meteorologist. He has originated a number of models and has also authored hundreds of scientific publications. His current focus is on the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development as a source of science-based solutions for integrated ocean management. We are really keen to have Dr. Ryavin here with us today to address us very briefly, and also interact and engage with some of the questions and comments that we have been seeing in our questions and answers. But before we actually get into that, I would just like to warmly welcome Dr. Ryavin into the floor and provide an opportunity for you to give a few words before we actually get full into the questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Alison. You know, of course, you introduced me as a big boss. We just all one team here working together, and the tsunami is a key element of the IOC program. So, ladies and gentlemen, tsunami warning is made of several parts. This is a technical and scientific part that is related to detection of the source of tsunami, and then some analytical work is going on to understand whether this source can generate tsunami or not. And we are dealing with seismic sources of tsunami. There are more sources than that, and we need now to learn how to deal with underwater avalanches, volcano collapses. Just for the sake of curiosity, the highest tsunami was very high in one of the lakes in Alaska. If I'm not mistaken, it was at least 500 meters, and some people survived there. So you know, that's so the sources are different. Then we need to understand what is happening. So we need to issue the alarm. The alarm has to go to people. People will need to know what to do, and they will have to do this. So there are multiple challenges of technological, scientific, and societal, psychological nature. So this all combines to a very complicated enterprise. But tsunami services do save lives, and I can even demonstrate it in the case of recent tsunamis that happened. So we are progressing, and very soon, I think, in the IOC Assembly, we are going to consider a tsunami program that is going to be a revolution in tsunami. And I know that Alexander Frolov is on the list of participants. He's going to present that work on behalf of all tsunami community. And we hope very much that IOC Assembly will really embrace the complexity of that exercise. This is really about mainstreaming of tsunamis. Now we speak about dozens of tsunami-ready communities. We would like to have all communities that are prone to tsunami part of the Tsunami Ready program. And that is the super challenge that requires big attention. And I hope the decade of ocean science for sustainable development will provide us to this platform to really reach to the whole world that is prone to tsunami and change it dramatically. Well, this is not just an incremental change, it's really revolution. And we hope to have program cooperation, pretty sure, with DRR, with WMO, with civil defense, so because we really need to embrace that the danger that is unfortunately infrequent, and because of that, people just don't really believe that this is may happen, but this may happen, and thousands of lives have been lost because of tsunamis. So we have to minimize that number. Thank you. Ready to answer questions if there are, but apparently there are even 10 questions here.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ryavin. You've really put for us in context some of the key objectives of the Global Tsunami Awareness Program, and of course within the Ocean Decade. So the actual target of having all at-risk communities being prepared for tsunamis by 2030. You have really highlighted some of the key elements of the decade in terms of working with our stakeholders and our partners, and of course under the safe ocean as it relates to the safety of our populations. So I will now turn to the first question, and I think this is quite an involved question, as we see from the panelists would be able to see from the questions and answers, and we'll probably direct this to Dr. Ryavin. What would you say are some of the real successes of the Global Tsunami Awareness Program? But we are also getting some specific requests as to how these advances may be able to provide with other countries to be able to start and maintain their tsunami readiness program, and how the IOC can really support. So we're looking at what are some of the real successes of the global program and how these can be highlighted or can be demonstrated for other countries to help them start, and what is the level of support through IOC as well.
Alison, thank you for conveying to me this question. You know, let me just answer very psychologically to that question. So imagine 1960, huge tsunami in the Pacific, kills people. Then in 1965, we established a tsunami system for the Pacific. 2004, Indian Ocean kills more than 200,000 people across the Indian Ocean. We one of my predecessors was actually sending a letter calling for establishment of that system. It was not done. Then we had tsunami, people got killed, and we have a system now. So we learned, you know, despite the human nature, we learned. So the Caribbean system and the Northeast Mediterranean Mediterranean and Northeast Atlantic system, opposite, Northeast Atlantic Mediterranean system, was established without a recent tsunami that killed people. So we are learning. You know, it is so this is, I think, a success. A success is also that we are now able to reduce the time from the detection of the earthquake to the tsunami warning in many locations. So technologically we are advancing. I would say that the society is more and more ready to start working on this. So this is the advances. And I forgot what was the second part of the question. Sorry.
How would we would use these advances to really influence other countries and communities to adapt some of the programs like Tsunami Ready, and how can IOC support?
Thank you very much, Alison. So we have a decade, which is a huge platform for the whole world to work on ocean science and including the issue of safe ocean. We are learning how to communicate. We have a communication strategy in IOC, and we are now trying to launch a campaign called Generation Ocean. We are also starting ocean literacy. That will be lessons about ocean in schools. And I think we have to really reach to partners and mainstream the whole approach. And I think with that, there is a good chance that we will reach much larger parts of the society. We hope to reach all of them, but at least, I think by the end 2030, we would like to have all vulnerable, truly vulnerable communities involved in that. That's the plan.
Thank you, Dr. Ryavin. And we have one last question, perhaps at the level of the IOC, where we are asking about what are maybe some of the key challenges that we have seen or we've experienced in implementing our programs, but particularly they want to know how perhaps authorities and the IOC maybe would suggest how to deal with distrust of the population towards the authorities in implementing the awareness program. So really, how do you deal with that community perception and the trust that they need to engender from national authorities?
I would say that indeed, but in some cases, there is a mistrust to authorities. There is mistrust to science. And we see that when we speak about climate change. And also, sometimes we had the false alarms, which is really, well, unarming us in many cases. But I would like to say that the whole world is becoming more and more science intensive. And we are able to demonstrate the capacity of science. The COVID, actually, in this particular case, also shows the role of science in saving the population. So my clear understanding is that, we can really popularize the science, promote the science, and also and this is in combination with, as I already said, psychological work, communication work, and also having some high-level policy attention to this, which the ocean is now getting in much bigger proportions than previously. So I think we have now all chances to really mainstream our business, and we are helpful to the world. But world will also understand it much better than the world understood it before.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ryavin, very much for your advice, contributions. We do know that trust and that relationship is very critical, irrespective of which hazard we're dealing with, but definitely for tsunamis, as you mentioned, particularly as well because of the time constraints that we do have in warning, but also the infrequency of the hazard, and therefore the information coming from authorities and also to have the population being warned and advised adequately is always under crunch, and therefore the authorities do experience significant pressure. So
Alison, if I may, because you formulated it better than I did, but in principle, I would like to say a quote from one Russian movie. So two brothers were speaking, and one of them was asking, what is the source of our strength, brother? And he said, our strength is in the truth. So we're really trying to do something really truthfully needed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. So at this point, we will move to some questions that we are also seeing that are a little more pointed to some of the other panelists. And I will invite Dr. Kumar. There is a question concerning the strategies for involving stakeholders and local authorities as it relates to tsunamis and disaster risk reduction strategies. So we did have a question a little further down in the queries as it relates to how can the National Tsunami Warning Centers really get capacity development support. But we also have slightly a wider question in terms of involving stakeholders and local authorities. So if we can look at, for example, what are the strategies that you have used, particularly in the Odisha experience for involving stakeholders and local authorities, and of course, how can the warning centers actually receive support and be embedded within those particular approaches that you have adopted as well?
Thanks, Alison. In the case of Odisha, in fact, if you take the whole chain, you have at the top end, the signs, the core signs, and then you're moving to the warning centers, which are actually using that signs to deliver warnings. Then we have, the disaster management agencies, which use those warnings. And then at the other end is the public, which just want to know, what do I need to do? So this is a whole, different levels of stakeholders looking at different levels of information. So it's a big challenge really in that sense to engage all these people. So what worked in Odisha really is actually the engagement that we could do with all these stakeholders as part of some of these common activities such as drills. Say, for example, when you have a drill, you engage all these stakeholders and then have workshops, have trainings, and then get them, actually recognize or know their responsibilities and then how they need to react and then respond. So that's one thing that we have done. And then the other thing actually that we did with respect to Tsunami Ready is, in fact, having this, the National Tsunami Ready Board, which I also mentioned before, which is actually a formal mechanism which comprises of all the stakeholders, starting from the disaster managers to the community leaders to the technical warning agency, which is in COIS, and the disaster management at the provincial level, as well as the, the federal level. So these people sitting together and then trying to look at, okay, this is what we need to do to actually deliver the Tsunami Ready, program in these communities. So that acted as a glue to really bring together all these stakeholders. And the other thing about, the capacity building for the tsunami warning centers you mentioned, that's again being done a lot as part of even the IOTWMS, the regional initiative. There are lots of training programs that are delivered to the National Tsunami Warning Centers, where the tsunami service providers also participate. These are being organized at the regional level, where there is a lot of training given on the kinds of products, kinds of services, dissemination methods, and all, and so on and so forth. And the drills, the regional drills that are done once in 2 years in the Indian Ocean region, say, for example, are taken as an opportunity to deliver these training programs through standard operational procedures, workshops on SOPs, developing guidelines, and then, of course, then following it up to the drills, and then, collecting feedbacks, and then feeding this information back to the NTWCs and the TSPs on where are the, gaps, etc., that needs to be, filled, or where additional training is needed. So these are some of the things, Alison, that I would like to mention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar. And we did have today online at least up to 113 the participants, and therefore we do want to provide, we are a little over time, but I think there are 2 questions that, and these are very specific questions, so I think we can offer the participants some more detailed discussion on these 2 questions, and then we probably would have to close based on our time constraints. So the next question would be for Dr. Nikos, in terms of the tsunami mapping. The question is directed to you, and it basically says, since tsunamis are not so common in Greece as they are in Chile, how would you have defined which areas must be evacuated in case of minor tsunamis? And this is really looking at our evacuation mapping and so on as well. What are some of the procedures, and what was the approach that was taken?
And that is a very good question. So there can be 2 types of tsunami evacuation maps. One type that is sort of probabilistic or case dependent. So you could map your area to different hazard zones depending on the magnitude of the expected tsunami. The other type is the worst case scenario type of map. You would consider different types of tsunami generation mechanisms that are probable, and you would define your hazard zone based on the maximum probable event. So this is the deterministic type of evacuation map or hazard map. This is the sort of science that we follow to produce the tsunami evacuation map for the tsunami hazard map for the city of Kos in the Tsunami Last Mile implementation. So if the tsunami is smaller than what you have defined as your maximum probable inundation zone, this is, I think, secondary to the fact that we need to have this sort of maps for most of the coastal communities that are in danger in Greece right now, before we can progress and have sort of more advanced products that take into consideration the magnitude of the expected tsunami in each case.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Kalidaris. We do have time for one more question. And this question I will direct to Dr. Laura Kong, Director of the International Tsunami Information Center. And particularly because I think also you are very familiar with maybe the source, the initial source of our Tsunami Ready programming and how we have adapted. The question is really, how can the Tsunami Ready experience be expanded to support readiness for other coastal hazards?
Okay,
and
thank you, Allison. Certainly, if you were to look at our Tsunami Ready program, there are guidelines in hazard assessment, which is obviously specific to tsunami, but as well in mitigation and especially in response. So with respect to response, response is about making sure there are plans, and plans certainly for tsunamis and other hazards. Oftentimes the stakeholders and the response mechanisms and the modalities would be the same, whether we're talking about a cyclone or in tsunamis. Tsunamis being different because everything has to happen much faster. So in terms of communication methods, in delivering and disseminating warnings, alerts, whether it's by wireless or by sirens or certainly by other communication means, all of those are really common to a lot of other hazards, so in a multi-hazard framework. And then finally, in terms of the staffing of emergency response, the EOCs, those just have to be centers which have to be able to respond to many hazards, and the personnel certainly have to be able to respond to not only tsunamis, but other hazards as well. So very much tsunamis must be part of a multi-hazard framework. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kong. And we do have, I would like, there's maybe one last question. We have about 2 minutes left. And there is this question, why are locally generated tsunamis so dangerous? It's really, I think, maybe one of the questions that we want to highlight, because it really focuses on the whole matter of the safe ocean and the outcome, and really what we are trying to achieve, and it relates to our tsunami preparedness. So for this question, I will ask Dr. Chacon to close by answering really, why is it that the local generated tsunamis are so dangerous, and also perhaps maybe provide some linkage as it relates to what we are trying to do globally in terms of our global tsunami awareness program. Thank you, Dr. Chacon.
Thank you, Alison. Local tsunamis are, they are tricky. You can have an instant warning by feeling the earthquake, but you can have very short time to act. Fortunately, in the case of Costa Rica, the time is not so that short as it was, for example, for the Palu tsunami of 2018. We are having arrival times of a minimum of 15 minutes in the Pacific and around 10 minutes in the Caribbean. But we need, for local tsunamis, the only way is to increase tsunami preparedness in the communities, and insist and exercise, because even when you have 15 minutes, as we do in Costa Rica, it could be a very short time if people doesn't know what to do, if people doesn't know where to go, and if they don't know how fast they need to go. So I think this is the main importance of community awareness and preparedness to ensure a fast and proper response.
Thank you, Dr. Chacon. And ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much for your rich discussion, which has really made this webinar quite a success. We are very pleased with our participation. We note as well there are some additional questions, comments, which we can try to address, but I also noted that a number of them are specifically quite technical as it relates to sources of tsunamis and warning times and so on, which would be a bit more detailed discussions in terms of based on our timeline, which we couldn't accommodate today. But I assure you some of this technical information you also require or requested can be available on our IOC website, as well as the websites of the Tsunami Information Centers globally. So particularly the International Tsunami Information Center, Caribbean Tsunami Information Center, as well as NEAM. And of course the Indian Ocean Tsunami Information Center. We definitely encourage you to visit those particular websites, and you would definitely see some information there on sources of tsunamis, warning times, how the actual tsunami early warning system is really structured and how it functions. So at this time, special appreciation also goes out to the video speakers, the UNDRR representative, Dennis Mclean, Dr. Vladimir Ryavin, our Executive Secretary, the hardworking team at the Tsunami Unit of the IOC, and also the technical team for the webinar who have all contributed to its success. We have been fortified by your feedback and your contributions to today's webinar participants, and therefore the IOC looks forward very much to the participation of our member state delegations at the upcoming IOC Assembly, and also to work with you, all of you, our partners and our stakeholders as we seek to transform tsunami awareness throughout the ocean decade up to 2030 and of course beyond. So we look forward hand in hand to developing that science and fact-based approach to transform our communities, our agencies, our technocrats, our populations to being very tsunami literate and of course a prepared population globally. Thank you, have a good day, and continue to be safe. Take good care. Bye-bye.